A woman who ruled Egypt for 2 decades, wearing the full double crown, the fake beard, calling herself literally a god, died because her face lotion gave her cancer. Not a metaphor. Chemists found benzopyrin, one of the most potent carcinogens on Earth, one of the same cancer-causing compounds found in cigarette smoke, sitting inside a flask of her personal skin cream. She probably applied it every day for decades. The god Pharaoh, taken down by moisturizer. She is not even the strangest entry on this list. Before we're done, we are going to get to the pharaoh who had his throat cut so deep the blade reached his spine minus, and simultaneously had his left big toe hacked off by a second attacker minus, on the same night minus, and whose embalmers then quietly tucked a magic amulet inside the open wound and wrapped it shut like absolutely nothing had happened. That's where we end up. Let's start at the beginning. Here's the thing you have to understand about pharaohs. Officially, they did not die. They flew up to join the sun. They united with the gods. Every inscription, every tomb wall, every gold coffin insists these men were immortal deities who simply relocated to the heavens. For 3,000 years, that was the story, and nobody could check it. And then we invented the SICT scanner and DNA testing, and, in one deeply funny case, a nuclear reactor. And it turns out that when you slide a 3,000-year-old god into a hospital machine and take 1,700 X-ray images of him in 15 minutes, the gods have some extremely embarrassing autopsy results. So this is the real list. Every pharaoh, and what actually killed him. Chronological order. Starting with a guy history forgot so hard we had to find him twice. Let's talk about Senebkay. You have never heard of Woserebre Senebkay. And that's not your fault. Nobody had heard of him. He ruled a tiny, broke, blink-and-you-miss-it kingdom around the town of Abydos, roughly 3,500 years ago. And then he vanished so completely that for millennia he simply was not on any king list. He got erased. Forgotten. And then in 2014, archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania dug his bones out of the sand, and by early 2015, the forensic scientists had taken one look and gone, oh no. Oh, he had a bad day. Senebkay had 18 separate wounds. 18. Each one deep enough to hit bone. And they were not all from one weapon or one attacker. This was a group project. Multiple men, swinging bronze axes with a curved blade shaped like a duck's bill, which is a delightful name for a thing that is going to be described doing what it's about to do. The forensic team reconstructed the entire sequence, and it is grim. It starts at the ankle. The first blow came in low and nearly severed his right foot minus, and the angle tells us he was up on a horse when it landed, because the ridges on his femur and pelvis prove this man spent his life in the saddle. So, mounted king, ankle strike, and down he goes. Once he's on the ground, they went for his knees and his hands, the hands, because he was trying to protect himself. And then, with him already down, 3 final axe blows to the skull. He was somewhere between 35 and 40 years old. And he holds a record nobody wants. Senebkay is currently the earliest known Egyptian pharaoh we can actually prove died in battle. First confirmed pharaoh to die fighting. Got forgotten for 3,000 years. And then his big comeback to the historical record was his own autopsy, rough millennium. Which brings us to a man who died even worse, and whose death somebody tried very hard to hide. Seqenenretah II. Around 1555 BCE, he's fighting a foreign dynasty called the Hyksos, who'd taken over the north of Egypt, and it does not go his way. His mummy has been sitting in a museum for over a century, and everyone knew he'd died violently, because half his face is caved in. But in 2021, a SICT scan revealed the parts nobody had seen and revealed exactly how bad it was. The scan mapped 5 different weapons to 5 different wounds on his head. 3 daggers minus, some with a lens-shaped blade, some diamond-shaped minus, plus a battle axe, plus a spearhead. 5 weapons, which means, again, a crowd. And these are not vague injuries, the measurements are almost obscenely precise. A forehead wound 70 millimeters wide, sitting 5 millimeters left of center. a spindle-shaped gash above the right eyebrow, 32 by 12. A cheek laceration running 35 millimeters at an angle across the bone, a fracture at the base of the skull, and every single one of them shows zero healing. None. His body never had time to even begin repairing itself. These all happened at the very end, all at once. But here's the detail that turns this from a battlefield death into something colder. His hands were tied behind his back. We know because his fingers are frozen hyperextended and his wrists are locked in a forcibly flexed position that's cadaveric spasm, the body seizing at the moment of a violent death, and it only makes that shape if the wrists were bound. And there is not a single defensive wound on his arms. Not one, because he could not raise them. This was not a man who fell fighting. This was a captured king, hands bound, executed by a group of men with 5 weapons standing over him. And then the embalmers. When his body came back for mummification, they had a problem. The king's face was destroyed, and a destroyed god is bad public relations. So they took the worst wounds, the ones on the right side of his skull, and they packed them with a thick layer of embalming material that basically functioned as surgical filler. Cosmetic cover-up. Smooth it over, make him look intact, don't let anyone see that Pharaoh was captured and butchered. And it worked, minds, for 3,400 years. Every previous examination missed those wounds entirely, because ancient morticians had literally spackled over the evidence. Hold on to that idea. Embalmers hiding a shameful death. It's gonna come back. Okay. Deep breath. Battlefield chaos. Over. Now we get weird. Now we get the moisturizer. Hatshepsut. One of the most successful rulers Egypt ever produced, a woman who took the throne, wore the ceremonial false beard, put on the full double crown, and ran the country for roughly 2 decades of peace and monster-building projects. And in 2011, researchers at the University of Bonn were going through a flask in their museum collection, a flask inscribed with her name, and they analyzed the dried-up residue inside. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect from a royal skincare product: palm oil, nutmeg oil, fatty acids. A medicinal lotion, the kind of thing you'd rub on for a chronic itchy skin condition like eczema manus. And we think Hatshepsut's family did have exactly that kind of skin problem. So far, so spa day. Except also in there was benzopyrene, which the researchers described, and I quote, as one of the most dangerous carcinogenic substances we know. It is one of the compounds that makes cigarette smoke cause cancer. It was in her face cream. And the working theory is devastating in its ordinariness. She had bad skin, so she applied this soothing lotion faithfully, probably daily, for years and years, and slowly, one gentle application at a time, gave herself cancer. We think she likely died of cancer that had spread into her bone. There's a possible mummy for her, catalogued as KV60A, identified in 2007 when a molar tooth from a box bearing her name seemed to fit a gap in the mummy's jaw, although honestly a 2011 study poured cold water on that, pointing out the tooth was from the lower jaw and the mummy was missing an upper one. Tooth forensics. Not an exact science. But the mummy did have a nasty abscessed tooth, and in a body already wrecked by cancer, an infection like that might have been the final push. So the woman who called herself a living god was, in the most modern possible way, killed by her own self-care routine. She had a skincare regimen. The skincare regimen won. Now, the most famous dead teenager in history. Tutankhamun. King Tut. Golden mask, cursed tomb, the whole tourist industry. And for decades, the sexy theory was murder, specifically that somebody bashed the boy king on the back of the head because his skull had loose bone fragments rattling around inside it. Assassination. Palace conspiracy. Great story. The 2005 CT scan killed that story dead. 1,700 images in 15 minutes on a portable machine, and it showed those skull fragments had shifted after death moved during the mummification process, not before it. Nobody clubbed him. The murder theory was, forgive me, all in his head. The truth is so much sadder. In 2010, the first ever DNA study of royal mummies approved by the Egyptian government told us what really happened to this kid. And it's a stack of catastrophes. 1. He had malaria. The deadliest strain, Plasmodium falciparum, and his remains are the oldest genetic proof of malaria in any human being, ever. 2. He had Koehler disease, a condition where a bone in the foot literally dies from lack of blood supply, leaving him seriously lame. 3. Days before he died, he broke his left thigh bone, and the wound was still open when they embalmed him, menis. We know, because embalming fluid seeped inside it. And here's why all of that piled up on one 19-year-old. He was badly inbred. That same DNA study concluded his parents were full brother and sister. Though I'll be honest, that part is still argued. Some Egyptologists say the genetic data fits just as well with generations of cousins marrying cousins. Either way, the branches on this family tree are doing a lot of overlapping. And that inbreeding left him with a compromised immune system and a body full of bone diseases, so when the malaria and the infections came, he simply could not fight them off. The Golden God King was, in the words of one Egyptologist, a frail, weak boy who had a bit of a clubfoot and who needed a cane to walk. And we know that's not a guess, because his tomb contained more than 130 walking sticks, and many of them show real wear. Real use. He needed them. The most glamorous pharaoh in the world was a sick teenager leaning on a cane, and the treasure everyone came to gawk at includes the mobility aids that kept him upright. Compare that to the guy who did the exact opposite of dying young. Ramses II. Ramses the Great. This man reigned for what felt like forever, and lived to roughly 90 years old, which for the Bronze Age is essentially cheating. And his mummy is a full catalog of what 90 years does to a person. Spinal arthritis so marked it left him permanently hunched over, teeth ground down to nubs, jawbone dissolving, and a serious abscess at the root of his lower left second molar that may well have turned septic and finished him off. There's no single dramatic cause of death. He just accumulated ailments until the pile got tall enough. He died of being extremely, extremely old. But Ramses earns his place on this list for what happened after he died. In 1975, a French doctor examining his mummy raised the alarm. A fungal infection was actively eating the body. It needed specialist treatment, and that treatment was in Paris. So in 1976, Egypt did the only sensible thing. It issued a 3,000-year-old corpse a passport. A real, official Egyptian passport. Occupation listed as King Kea. Because French law said a body couldn't cross the border without documentation, and rules are rules. They flew a dead pharaoh to France, took him to the Saclay nuclear facility, and blasted him with gamma rays to kill the fungus. The greatest king of the ancient world got a passport, a plane ticket, and a session inside a nuclear reactor, all several millennia into being dead. He would have loved it. It's the most god-pharaoh thing on this entire list. Which brings us, finally, back to the throat and the toe. Ramses III, around 1155 BC. For centuries his death was a rumor. There were ancient court documents describing a conspiracy against him, but no proof it ever succeeded. Then in 2012, a study in the British Medical Journal by Zahi Hawass's team scanned the mummy. And there it was, hidden under the linen wrappings at his neck. The first hard forensic proof of a 3,000-year-old murder. His throat had been slashed so deeply the cut reached the vertebrae one stroke that severed his windpipe, his esophagus, and the major blood vessels all at once. Instantly fatal. And at the same moment, a second attacker with a different weapon hacked off his left big toe, which tells us at least 2 people were on him at once, closing in from different sides. Coordinated. Fast. Done. And then, the embalmers, again. Same instinct as Sekenenreta II, 1,300 years later. They took the gaping throat wound, and instead of just wrapping it, they placed an amulet shaped like the Eye of Horus directly inside the cut. A magical object, meant to heal the king in the afterlife, to make him whole again. Then they layered thick linen over the top and hid the whole thing. Cover the shameful wound, restore the god. Tell no one. And who did it? The plot came from inside the palace. A secondary wife named T who wanted her son Pentower to take the throne instead of the rightful heir. And this was not a quiet poisoning, this was a full-spectrum operation. There was the physical assassination. There was an attempted military coup to seize power afterward. And there was actual black magic. Conspirators broke into the royal library and stole sacred spells to use against the king. We know all of this because it went to trial, and the trials are written down in a document we still have, the Judicial Papyrus of Turin. They killed him, and then they got caught. And then somebody wrote it all down, and we can still read it. So that's the list. Every pharaoh, and how the god actually died. And once you line them up, the pattern is impossible to miss. These men spent their entire lives, massive and their entire enormous budgets, insisting they were immortal, that death did not touch them, that they simply ascended. And the reality was a horse accident, a tooth abscess, a moisturizer, a family tree with no branches, a knife in the dark from your own wife. And every single time the death was too embarrassing, the same fix, the embalmers covered it up, packed the wounds, hid the throat, filled in the face, wrapped it all in linen and gold and 3,000 years of silence, hoping the shame would stay buried with the god. It didn't. Because we built machines that see through linen. We can read the DNA of a 19-year-old dead king and diagnose the malaria that killed him. We can put a pharaoh in a SICT scanner and count the weapons. We can find the toe. Turns out, you can call yourself a god all you like, but you cannot outrun a hospital scanner and a very determined scientist with a grudge against a mystery. The gods, it turns out, were just people. Fragile, unlucky, occasionally poisoned by their own skincare people. And they were, every last one of them, spectacularly bad at the one thing they promised they'd never do. That's the dumb ages. The crown never saved anybody. See you at the next tomb.